let's talk about the time that Peter walked on water. And first, let's read part of Matthew chapter 14 where it talks about this. Immediately, Jesus made the disciples get into the boat and go on ahead of him to the other side while he dismissed the crowd. After he had dismissed them, he went up onto a mountainside by himself to pray. Later that night, he was there alone, and the boat was already a considerable distance from the land, buffeted by the waves because the wind was against it. Shortly before dawn, Jesus went out to them, walking on the lake. When the disciples saw him walking on the lake, they were terrified. "It's a ghost," they said, and cried out in fear. But Jesus immediately said to them, "Take courage, it is I, don't be afraid." "Lord, if it is you," Peter replied, "tell me to come out into the water to you." "Come," he said. Then Peter got out of the boat, walked on the water, and came toward Jesus. But when he saw the wind, he was afraid and began to sink. Cried out, "Lord, save me." Jesus immediately reached out his hand and caught him. "You little of faith," he said, "why did you doubt?" And when they climbed into the boat, the wind died down. Then those who were in the boat worshipped him, saying, "Truly, you are the Son of God." And so let's backpedal. So Jesus was like dismissing the crowd of the place they were at where they were performing these miracles. And so the disciples went onto a boat and were crossing to the other side of the lake. And when night fell after Jesus prayed, he went out and walked on the lake to them. Like he physically went out to the lake, walked out to the boat. And they were afraid by the sight of that because they've never seen anything like that. But Jesus immediately reassured their fears and said, "It is I, do not be afraid." And this next part is really important. This is where Peter walks on water. So this is more so an act of just going towards Jesus rather than is Jesus performing a miracle. So Peter says that, "Lord, if it's you, tell me to come out to you on the water." And so he does. He says, "Come." And so Peter steps out of the boat and he starts walking towards Jesus. He's just walking along the water, on top of the water. And it isn't until that he takes his eyes off of Jesus, where he's looking at the winds or the waves or how deep it is down if he falls in the water, that he starts to sink and he starts to drown. And then he calls out for Jesus. He says, "Lord, save me." Because he was sinking. He was like, I took my eyes off Jesus. I'm afraid. Then he started to sink and he's reaching out for Jesus, and Jesus grabs him and says, "You little of faith, why did you doubt?" And we can apply this to so many different aspects of our life when we're going through any trials or tribulations and look at it like a storm, right? We can get through anything in life as long as we keep our eyes on Jesus, right? And not the storm that around us. Jesus doesn't promise that there's not going to be any storms in our life. He promises that within the storm, he will always be